In a time of darkness and greed, it is your light that we need. You came to teach us how to live. Muhammad, Ya Rasulullah, you were so caring and kind. Your soul was full of light. You are the best of mankind. Muhammad, khayru khalqillah. Sallu ala Rasulillah, Habib al-Mustafa. Peace be upon.
That the word tajir was actually started by Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The word tajir is instead of simsar in the times of Jahiliyyah. Now I'll say I'm not an expert on this, and mashallah there are many mashayikh here, so I have to be very careful. So this shows that this kind of work is receiving a great deal of attention. It is being received by a number of people, old, young, men, women, from different parts of the world, different faiths and so on, because they see the importance of this project. Now, what do we mean by, what National Geographic has actually done is also, they have produced recently a book for kids out of that 1,000 inventions, so that can be used in the schools and families and so on. Rather than go and follow the same pattern of women's lib and suffragettes and so on, fight your way into the society. You don't have to fight, my good sister, because all you need to do in a Muslim society is to say, I want my right, which was 1,000 years ago, and you'll feel many times better in taking that right, because it gives you what we call, in brackets, equality in society. Muslims now are a candidate for improving upon the world, because they're starting to build their nations. Now I want to look at that. And how can one say, why is it, how did this world in the past manage to live in an economic stability situation? What kind of development, what kind of institutions? And you find that it is actually the individual behavior, the individual person, the human resource, the quality, the unit quality of a human society is what counts. And I tell you one thing, it is linked also a little bit with Oman. You'd be happy to say. Oman? What has Oman to offer to the world? Stability of the economy of the world? How could the Omanis do that? Well, I'll tell you one thing. The behavior of the Omanis, your great-great-grandfathers before, they had a special characteristic in their trades, the way they used to conduct their business.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I would like to salute you with an everlasting salutation. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and mercy and blessings of Allah be upon you all. On behalf of the Sultan Qaboos Center for Islamic Culture and the Islamic Information Center, I would like to thank you all for attending tonight. Tonight, our honorable speaker, whom I will introduce later, is going to talk about Muslim heritage and development, lessons from the past to design a better future, inshallah. We'll start with the recitation of the Quran, chapter 27, verses 36 to 44. These verses are talking about the queen who discovered Muslim heritage and development and chose that way of life, not only for herself, but also for her entire nation. So please take heed of the translations as the verse is being recited by Saud ibn Muhammad al-Harthi.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. فلما جاء سليمان قال تمدونني بمال فما آتاني الله خير مما آتاكم بل أنتم بهديتكم تفرحون. ارجع إليهم فلنأتينهم بجنود لا قبل لهم بها ولنخرجنهم منها أذلة وهم صاغرون. قال يا أيها الملأ أيكم يأتيني بعرشها قبل أن يأتوني مسلمين. قال عفريت من الجن أنا آتيك به قبل أن تقوم من مقامك وإني عليه لقوي أمين. قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب أنا آتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك فلما رآه مستقرا عنده قال هذا من فضل ربي ليبلوني أشكر أم أكفر ومن شكر فإنما يشكر لنفسه وما كفر فإن ربي غني كريم. قال نكروا لها عرشها ننظر أتهتدي أم تكون من الذين لا يهتدون. فلما جاءت قيل هكذا عرشك قالت كأنه وأوتينا العلم من قبلها وكنا مسلمين. وصدها ما كانت تعبد من دون الله إنها كانت من قوم كافرين. قيل لها ادخل الصرح فلما رأته حسبته لجة وكشفت عن ساقيها قال إنه صرح مورد من قوارير. قالت رب إني ظلمت نفسي وأسلمت مع سليمان لله رب العالمين. صدق الله العظيم.
صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. Before I introduce our honorable speaker, please keep your mobile phone silent and please fill the questionnaire whenever you have time. Even at the end of the talk, we need to collect those questionnaires. In case of emergency, the exits are this one here and the other one at the back, and there is assembly points outside the building. Our honorable speaker tonight is Emeritus Professor Salim, Professor of Mechanical Engineering in Manchester University. He is also President of the Foundation of Science, Technology and Civilization in the UK. He is a professional fellow in humanities at Manchester University. He has authored and edited 300 publications and has given 150 keynote public lectures. He is a recipient of the Global Science Award from the New York Hall of Science. He is named among the 500 most influential Muslims in the category of science and technology for the years 2011 and 2012. Please take heed of what the professor is going to unleash on how we can use our heritage and development lessons as stepping stones to build a better future, inshallah. Welcome, Professor.
Assalamu alaikum. Very nice to see some of you again. I just wonder how many of you have attended the lecture I gave on Monday evening in the university. All right, so there's about a third of you. So we've got to refresh. I'm going to have to, because I don't like to keep repeating some of the things that I speak about. So I got to refer to a few issues before we go into this very important subject. Development is extremely important. No nation, no group, no company, no business, not even a family can do without development. So what does this Muslim heritage to do with development? This is an issue that needs to be explained. Well, in fact, before we go into Muslim heritage, what has the past to offer for the future? It's gone, right? And we're talking about building something which is for the future. Now this is also another critical issue. And a lot of people say, well, look, what do you want to do with the past? And in Turkey, there is a big struggle between people who think that they should use the past for the future. They are accused of being irtija'i, all right? The Arabs call it raj'i. That means that you actually want us to walk backwards. Right. Go forward, but your eyes are, so you fall into trouble. Or they say, well, these people, they just want us to copy the exact copycat of what the Prophet ﷺ did and what the companions have done, and they want to wear exactly like he did, they want to walk exactly like he did, and then they want to appear exactly like he did, and they also, they stop there because none of them say we have to wear the same, we have to ride the same, because they drive nice cars, right? So they don't drive camels, and they use airplanes. There were no airplanes before. So there is, frankly, there is now a business of pick and choose things which we want from the Sunnah and from the heritage, from the Sahaba and all the Salaf and so on. So there is a bit of cherry picking going on as our nations everywhere, throughout the world, they want to pick up and they want to improve themselves by, taking that example. So which part of Muslim heritage that actually relates to a better future? Now, of course, if you speak about the ultimate future, we all say, of course, either going to be in Jannah or Nar, isn't it? That's the future. And therefore, a lot of the Islamic people, they say, look, you've got to make sure that whilst you're living in the world today, but don't forget about your akhirah, don't forget about your real future, because that's where you're going to have an eternal life, and you want to be in hell or you want to be in paradise. So that is another issue. And any real serious development has to cope with all these issues. And therefore understanding the Muslim heritage attitude and the Islamic concept of development is very important, because if you don't do that, you may end up with, without guidance. Some people think that if you just stick to the Islamic, so-called Islamic, because Islam is so big, but their narrow vision of Islam, and that if you concentrate on development of your faith and your iman, and you continue to do this without worrying about everything else, Allah will solve your problems and you will end up in paradise. So what's all this business about development of a society and development of buildings, development of cars and airplanes and so on? But what they don't realize is the other people who are developing it and you are using it today. And that makes it difficult for you to control your children, to control your future, build your future, if you are not a master of your own destiny in this world. So we need to therefore revisit the Muslim heritage and find out what has it got to offer for us, right? So that we can use these tools and use this mental model to improve our present, so that our children and their children and their children's children will benefit. But then we are not in isolation. You can't just say, I'm staying here in Muscat, and whatever happens elsewhere in Oman is not going to affect me. This is not anymore the case. The world has become so small, anything happens anywhere can affect you. It's very complex, very dynamic, and we cannot ignore what can happen in the world, right? Which can be very devastating to you, even if you're sitting doing very nice things and minding your own business, it will come, right? And therefore you have to be aware of what's happening and have something to say in it and see if you can actually help to control it, rather than other people controlling it and causes a problem. And that is the question of who is the most prudent, who is the most appropriate group that should control the future of the world. Adam, peace be upon him, was created for a purpose on this world, on this planet. Right? إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. So there is a strategic vision for Adam. He was representing Allah in the earth. And he is supposed to cultivate this earth for a purpose, right? And the way he or she are going to do it will determine whether they will end up in hell or in paradise. That's it, right? This is the whole story. So therefore, people like that who feel that they have a responsibility on the earth, and what happens to it, well, I mean, to it means people in it, the animals in it, all its aspects of livelihood in this globe, on this earth, is the responsibility, directly or indirectly, of every one of us. And some people don't realize that. And therefore, when we speak about development, we have to have a very quick visit about certain issues. This world that we are talking about is extremely complex. There are so many issues going around. You know, it's just huge issues happening every day. And therefore, in order to sort of carve a space for you to try to contribute and do all these nice things that you have about your ideology, your faith, and so on, will need to be aware of what's happening around you. Now, what's happening around you has been analyzed, and people over the last so many years have been studying the process of what's happening on Earth. And I showed this slide before on Monday. It went very fast, and some people probably I might not have been successful in bringing home the message that I'm trying to mention. This here, this graph, shows a very frightening trend, right? Now, it may not apply on a particular small local area, but when you bring in the whole lot around the earth, it will affect you in due course. The population is exploding around. Now, some populations are moving extremely fast, like in Africa and somewhere else, because of their, multiple marriages and a lot of children and so on. Populations in Europe is going down. In America, it's almost steady, but all in all, it's growing in a very frightening manner. And in my lifetime, you will see population has gone, the red one, the blue one there from 1940, and then you look at how it has increased in 1970, the red there, that first group on the left-hand side, and then look at what happened to it in 2010. And we expect that in 2050 it's going to go all the way up there. It's just, look at the difference over just the span of one's lifetime. That's population. And out of those populations, about a third of them, they live in cities, the urban, and the urban living, and the number of people living in urbans and cities and so on, has look at the extent, in 1940 that's small, just about half, and then look at, expected in 250 it goes all the way. These G's are not totally accurate, but it gives you the trend. And if you take the dotted line and choose, say, what is the capacity of the earth to cope, no matter where you take it, in 2050 you're way above it. You've exceeded in everything. The energy consumption and the ecosystem is just not going to happen. It's not going to be possible. So what happens is that when there is shortage, people start fighting each other. I'll give you a simple example. In England, we used to give example of people, they like to have order, right? And when you go and wait for the bus, everybody is waiting in a queue, right? They all nicely stand one after each other, and you can have a long queue. They are all waiting for the bus, thinking that when the bus comes, they can all get in. One day, there was a problem with the bus system. And these buses are going to be very scarce. So as this queue has started becoming longer and they know they are not all going to get fit in, that queue just didn't work anymore. People want to get in the bus and they started fighting each other to try to get there. So, order will disappear when you begin to... It happened to me once in Turkey. Suddenly the airline decided, here, I'm sorry, we don't have seating numbers, no booking, so you have to just go in and find a seat in the airplane. Wallahi, people started behaving like animals. And there's, even in the business class, everybody's worried about his own seat, and they started pushing each other and shouldering each other. I said, I don't know what's going on. So the question of morality and conduct, when there is abundance, yes, fine, but as things become crowded and people begin to be tested by their selfishness, by their moral code, by their moral conduct, and that's really where it matters. Not when fine, everybody, then you wouldn't know. You only know the quality of people when there is a problem and see how they behave. So this is really, and you cannot develop in Oman or in Muscat, or even in a school, or in a project, in an oil company and so on, in isolation of what's happening around you. And we know that there are going to be problems. So we've got to be careful. So if, I said that we've borrowed this from somewhere, and that is, if people live like a person living in Cuba, an average person in Cuba, mediocre means, then you can hope to think that our planet, our home, the Earth, can cope to live, you can manage. But if people live like an Australian, you need 3.7 planets, 3.7 Earths. Now, if they have to live like a Texan or a New York person, how many planets do we need? So now, America and the West, they want you and the Indians and the Chinese and everybody else and Africans to adopt their way of life, to adopt their way of thinking. Now, can you imagine what happens if all the Indians and Africans and the Muslims and so on, they all, want to live like the American, New Yorker and Texan? It's not going to happen. There's going to be huge conflict and wars. And the human nature and the earth, it will have its own dynamics, which will try to bring things down. And that will be at the cost of human lives and the obliteration of animals, obliteration of plants and so on. So, we're living in a problem where many people think that, okay, living as usual, everything is going to the better, right? Wherever you are, whether you are in London, Oman, the King and so on, carry on, everything is going to be fine. Tomorrow will be better than today because we are investing, we are developing. So development tells you that things are going to get better, right? But then there are a lot of surprises. Things can happen, right? And these things, when they happen, then it causes this curve to start coming down. And actually that's where the life cycle of organizations, the life cycle of groups of people, the life cycle of civilizations. And this is like this, the theory of Ibn Khaldun. And Ibn Khaldun speaks a lot about what happens to nations and groups and organizations. And this is adopted, his theories are adopted in top management. In fact, his book, the introduction, Muqaddimat Ibn Khaldun, was studied by President Reagan, and he gave it as a present to President Carter when he was elected. And he said to him, I followed a lot of the advice from this Bedouin, and my advice to you, read what he says about taxing and about how to run a society. Of course, Ibn Khaldun had a lot of very interesting ideas about the rise of nations and the fall of nations. And the idea is that you actually, because of the connectiveness of many problems around the world, they can cause your curve to come down. Unless you have some other solutions to try to keep things going and it's just naturally it will come down. So what can happen is, if you look at the present here, you've got some, and that is what we call Horizon 1. Today, if you just run as usual, like if we have a university, say, and this university has got problems. And what it tends to do, you plan and you do things to keep things going, but try to improve it, right? But then what may happen is that it will continue to go down, and then you're in trouble. So that's Horizon 1. What you want actually is to go to what we call Horizon 3, which is the future. That future needs to have plans to get there. Some of the things that you do today, right, they are a combination of things that you are maintaining, keeping things as they are, and a lot of people who are happy of their comfort zone, they will say, I'm happy, you don't want to change. They don't like anybody to come and do any change, right? So Horizon 1 people always don't like change, and they go down. So if you get fragmented sort of innovations and try to help and things and so on, and we're fine, but try to improve this, improve that. And then you got some people who have got innovation, they've got good ideas, but like revolutionary ideas. Try to you get new things done so that they can, this curve, they're not aware of that, but they change the status quo and try to get something done. There is struggle between Horizon 1 people and Horizon 2 people. Right? Horizon 2 people see what's the future, and then they come and say to their management that you've got to change. And the management says, well, I know you change, we're doing fine. Why do we have to change? There's always struggle between the two. The guys who look outside and the future, and the guys who are happy with the inside and manage today. And then you've got the single planet living, right? People don't realize that they're going to exhaust the environment and all the problems that comes with it is going to affect your project in the long run. And then you've got this Horizon 3, people who are aware of what's happening and they want to save the world. Everything they do is linked with saving energy, linked with saving the ecosystem, and so on. These people, their organization and their planning and so on will be what we call Horizon 3. And that can happen in every organization at any level, even in this mosque. And so this will develop the future, and then what we call the adaptive imperative. And then at the end, you get a lot of organizations and a lot of people who believe that we should adjust our organization, adjust our development, adjust our planning so that we can live comfortably in this planet. All right? The things you do, small things in here today, like switching the light on or off, or the amount of water you use, right? The amount of energy you use, all has to do with your attitude about single planet living. We will discover later that the early Muslims, when they lived, their families, the women, the men, their conduct, they were not aware of all the important needs now, but the way they lived actually encouraged one planet living. We'll see that in a minute. So let's sort of make a move on. The world, like any project, normally any big project has got 12 very important factors that needs to be identified. And these factors, like in this case, you've got the cultural values and your worldview. In any organization, you have a certain mental model and your ideas and so on. This has to govern that organization. And the same thing in government, same thing in, in continents and so on. Then you've got health and well-being of people. Then you've got food and agriculture, you've got business and trade, energy and the earth resources, climate change, the intensity and the rate at which climate can change. And then you've got the ecosystem, the services. And then you've got the water availability, the habitat and the infrastructure, the economy and the wealth, and the governance and how it is instituted. And then you've got the community whether this community is flexible and is it resilient or is it very brittle, they don't like to change, and then they will resist any change and so on. That becomes a brittle community. So the resilience, which is a measure of their ability to adapt of the community, is called resilience. Every one of those factors is linked with the others. What you do in one will affect the others. And that's how complicated it is. And the way these factors interact with each other, they can produce positive and fast change, or it can produce negative and very quick collapse. It depends on how they combine and interact with each other. So all these factors, to be healthy, and to be dynamic, right, they should be balanced, so that there is dynamic balancing with each other as challenges and shocks arise. You know, a big earthquake may happen in Japan and produce a nuclear catastrophe. What's going to happen to the world? Right? When Chernobyl happened, it has affected everybody in the world. And then, you know, these things do affect. Then the economic system, then the banking collapsing system, and so on. It really has these, and as soon as one affects the other and it changes, the other changes, and so you've got and there are a lot of methods of how. Well, we've got what we call a world game. This world game are played by 12 people, and each of them represents one represents the climate, one represents, and you are sitting in management and you want to organize your school, or organize your university, organize your hospital, or organize any project. When you go on and train to use this as a game, it will make you aware of the potential, consequences that can take place, and that will make you a better manager, I hope. Anyway, so the only way to try to save the world and have high quality development is that we must work together. You can't do it singly. And this working together requires understanding and requires cultural respect and so on. How do you relate to the others so that you are working together? Whether you are in one organization or you are in multiple organizations all across the world. And there is what we've developed a tool, thinking tool, which is called Be the Future tool. I can't go into details with it, but it just tells you that it came out after studies in cybernetics and looking at the characteristics of remarkable people who have been very remarkable throughout history and now. And you look at their characters and see what they did in their life, you'll find that they all fit in this. Can't go into details, but they were able to adjust their mental model when they re-perceive a situation. When they see something and they look at it, they understand it, and then what they do is that when it changes their attitude, it changes their mental model, and then when mental model changes, they were able to adopt an attitude. And this attitude, when it is adopted, it is then communicated to others. And when you communicate it to others, then you begin to organize, and so on. So most of the remarkable people, men or women, they were able, you can fit them in here. You can actually get remarkable people in Oman, and so on. Then you can actually fit these in. There are a lot of layers of this. We can't get into that. This, we have a management course, what we call youth leaders course, that we give, which predominantly is about that and how they can be the future course. Now let's move on to where history comes in and Muslim heritage comes in. How does Muslim heritage fit in development? Before focusing much into it, let's just get some examples of what I think they are developments, right, in our modern times. Yesterday I mentioned Al-Biruni. I will mention Al-Biruni today again for some other incident. Al-Biruni, I mentioned him when he has mentioned about Rihana, the lady who has been helping him, right, to produce all this phenomenal work that he has produced, about 200 books, and measured all sorts of things, mechanics and astronomy and so on. These people, they depict him as that picture on the left, bottom left, number 2. I doubt whether he looked like that. But anyway, he was born 1973 and he died in 1050, right? Almost 1,000 years ago. And he's developed enormous knowledge in various fields, in astronomy, in math, geodesy, observatories, and astrolabes, social anthropology, and he has done a lot of work on the concept of science and faith. Many people are interested in the subject. You can read some of his work about science and faith. What I like to refer to is an incident where he has predicted the circumference of the earth. He has done some theoretical calculations using trigonometry and the movement of the stars, and because he believes that the earth is spherical, he has predicted the arc length of 1 degree and then multiplied it by 360 times, so they get 360 and get them more. He conducted experiment using people and to do pacing and measurements and so on, moving on opposite directions, so he's got some measurements. When he compared the measurements with the theoretical predictions, they were different. And he wanted to repeat the experiment. It's a big experiment, involves a lot of people. But he says, unfortunately, I couldn't do this experiment because the waqif, the sponsor, has died. Now I caught in on that one. So there is a waqif here. 1,000 years ago, somebody funds Al-Biruni to measure the circumference of the earth. Now this is really incredible. Now I always mention this example because I think it just tells you, first of all, he says waqif, right? That means somebody who is giving money fi sabilillah, right? It is a religious act. It is not an investment for money. He did not go there for a sponsor so that this sponsor will make money out of this project. There is no money out of this project. And not many people even will know, right? So sponsoring for being recognized and being appreciated for advertisement purposes, not even that element. Can you imagine if I come and ask you as a rich lady or as a rich person and say, today, after 1,000 years, and say, can you give me $10 million to go and measure the circumference of the earth? I think you'll say that, yeah, go to somebody else. What has measuring the circumference of the earth to do with life? Right. So that kind of incident tells us that the awqaf system in Muslim heritage was a much wider scope of work and function than what I have been taught about today. Because when you mention the word waqf, you think about a masjid, right? Maybe perhaps a hospital or a school. You put some project in shops and so on and hire, and that's what the waqf is. But when you look at the role of waqf, and that's another subject which we are also working on, to look at the role of awqaf in Muslim heritage throughout Muslim history in development, in actually developing science and technology and medicine and the development. The real secret of Muslim civilization was funding, and the funding was not done all by governments. Sometimes the government have a good khalifa or a good king or good so on, and then he will encourage people and take some of his money, which he takes from Bayt al-Mal, and give it to some of these projects, endowments. But in general, it's the public. Those people who have money, their understanding of the outlets of Amal al-Salih is much wider. Now, so the Waqf Foundation and the Waqf institution is a key in the Muslim civilization development. When you look at what's happening in the West, you find that the role of charity organizations and the grants, that's also based on the same system. Well, you know about Harvard University, right? You know about Stanford University, Oxford University, Cambridge University, all these universities, they were through donations and sponsorship of endowment of some families or a rich person, a guy called Harvard, he has money as well. Same as Stanford and others. So the idea here that when the public gets involved in the development of the future of the society, things work well. And that has come from the early Muslim civilization. Unfortunately, what happened later on is that the Muslims have become highly centralized because of the wars and so on, and they have to depend a lot on government. And the awqaf system has become so small and shrunk, and in many places the awqaf have been controlled by the government. And this control was for a good reason, because it has to be looked after, it has to be managed, it has to be efficiently run. But what happens, the disadvantage is that the organic nature of expansion of awqaf did not continue. And therefore the awqaf became more like a single institution, organized and managed and directed by government, rather than an independent system on its own. So the idea of awqaf is to sponsor the improvement of the quality of life of people. You get orphans, give them livelihood so they can. Making schools so that people get educated. Education was the most important, function in the Muslim civilization. People have to learn. Right? Many hadiths in the Quran, and even in the Quran and ayat, encourages the believers to seek knowledge. Seek knowledge, even if it is from the kafir, right? When there's seek knowledge, even if it's from China, right? Some people say this hadith is not very sahih, but because it is hasan, but we can mention it, we can use it, because it actually tells you two things. One is that even if it was as far as China, so you have to, even if it's very long in that case, but also has the meaning of China. China wasn't a Muslim in those days. So, there are two things in this hadith. One is that the distance, and therefore very, much effort has to be given, and then it's the fact that it's coming from non-Muslims. So these two tell us that al-hikmatu dhallatul mu'min, the hikmah, wisdom and knowledge, is the lost camel of a believer. The seeking of knowledge, طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم ومسلمة. That's another hadith. Right? Some people say there was some slight changes in this, but طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم ومسلمة even. Right? And seeking of knowledge is compulsory, right? It's a religious compulsory duty to seek knowledge by every Muslim male and female. So this idea here, it brings in this education, and it tells you how much that has affected people. I come again to Al-Bayruni. He's my favorite guy. When he was in his deathbed, I mentioned this story before, when he was, in 92 years of age, and he was dying, and then somebody comes from another town trying to say salam to him, and then Al-Bayruni, when he heard who was coming, he tried to stand in respect to greet him. He couldn't. So he said to him, please, I have been looking for you for the last so many years. You have a solution to this problem, and please tell me what it is. And when he told him what the problem was, it was a mathematical problem. Mathematical problem. A man is dying, right? What was he going to do with the mathematical problem? The solution of the mathematical problem. But then when he realized that people are wondering, what's this question? So he turned and he says, كيف بي يعني إذا قابلت ربي وقيض لي فرصة التعلم أحيانا what would I say to my Creator when He has given me an opportunity to learn and I have refused it? So seeking of knowledge, and it was part of a faith process. Seeking of knowledge is part of faith. It is a religious duty. And people understood that. And they behaved accordingly. And even to the deathbed. This is remarkable. I now go on to development in another, that was development of education. It shows you why there were so many polymaths like Al-Biruni, men and women, knowledge and they go. And how the books used to be established, thousands of books. How did they travel? People, when they go from Baghdad, he has some books with him or with her. And while they're going to Damascus, they're working on the road. They don't just go and sit in their own homes. No, while they are traveling. And then when they reach Damascus, they would be giving their books that they have finished, and they replace them with another set. Right. And then they reach somewhere else, the same thing happens. They go to Mecca, same exchange of books and manuscripts has been happening like this throughout the world through traveling. That's why you find them, they're spread everywhere. You never know where you find a book because of this homogeneity of distribution through the travel system. Now let me get to the incident that is also very striking. Everybody knows about Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, when he said, I fear that Allah may hold me accountable, right, for a stone on the path of a camel going to the Yemen or going to Baghdad. This is amazing. Can you think about this? There's a Khalifa whose armies and the fastest rate of expansion, it's just going like an explosion out of Arabia into Iraq, Syria, and Egypt, and so on in his time. They're going everywhere. And then he says, I'm worried about if there is a stone on the path. Now, this kind of thinking, lest an animal trip over it. It is not that so that people trip over. No, he's worried about the animal. This is civil engineering, road works, planning, health and safety. All that comes into this. But also tells us something else. Is that how does this man sleep? How could he sleep if he's worried about this only? If he's worried about this small thing, and he's got all these big issues. How did he manage to run and manage? It shows you about the way of the management systems, that there was a lot of decentralization, a lot of giving authority of people whom he trusted, so that he effectively once has been seen sleeping in the shade of a tree by the ambassador of Persia when he came to Medina, and he was asking about this great Khalifa of these, the Amir al-Mu'mineen, that has put terror in the heart of the Persians and so on. Then when he came and he asked about him, and they say, you'll find him asleep under that tree. And the story, as you know, it says that you have been just, and then you have been comfortable, and you slept well, and he declared that he became a Muslim. Now how could, so that tells you that the management style of Umar must have been so well, right, that things were working by themselves almost. He's beaten himself out of a job. He did not have to sign every day, every minute, right, so that he gives authority to people. Now, I may be critical of some bureaucracy and so on in various Muslim countries, but that is a fact. Bureaucracy can kill development. These guys that are from Muslim heritage, there was no bureaucracy. No bureaucracy. The bureaucracy came afterward when the Muslim Ummah, the Muslim civilized, the Muslim states had to become highly centralized during the Ottoman. Right? And the Ottoman had a reason for doing it, because they were in a war situation. They were defending the lands of Islam in Europe and in Russia and in Asia, the problems they had with Iran. So it became a military organization. Military organization has to be run by a centralized authority. Cannot afford to otherwise. Anyway, so the incident of Khalifa Umar, and his story and management is very amazing. The other issue about education and the ability of people to develop awqaf by themselves. Right, they say, this is waqf fi sabilillah, and they do it. And the example I give is the first university in the world, and that is the University of Al-Qarawiyyin, which still exists today, that was built and project managed by Fatima al-Fihri. She was 23 years of age, and she was in the city of Faz in the year 859, more than 1,000 years ago, establishing a university, right? And the funding of it, and the management of building it, and so on. So it shows you that the atmosphere of people that she did not give her money to an awqaf institution, which awqaf institution will actually go and do it. She did it by herself, fi sabilillah. But then later, when things have gone on, it became part of the awqaf system. Right? Now, I'm not going to describe the various aspects of the first university in history, and how the concept of chair, kursi, how the concept of graduation, wearing the gown, the wearing of the mortarboard, which is related to the Quran, and so the function of the university and how it is planned and throughout the ages. I'm not going to get into that. I'd like to go into another lady who has done a remarkable project in the same sort of spirit of awqaf, and project managed it, but also individual, but in another way, in a civil engineering way. This project is Darb Zubaydah. Darb Zubaydah, not many people actually know about it, but the lady was the wife of Harun al-Rashid, and she had collected funds and pushed her husband to give money because she wanted to make it easy for the pilgrims, for the Hajjaj, to go from Baghdad all the way to Mecca. It's like producing a highway from Mecca to Baghdad, from Baghdad to Mecca, via Kufa. This is a huge project, Yanas. Please, just think about it. It's a huge thing. It cannot be brushed out of history. And until now, you find there are wells they had to dig, and they put a house, and they put hotel, and people live there, and they go there and have rest. How much reward she must have gained. Until now, you go out of Mecca, in the north of Mecca, you find there is Nab' Zubaydah. You go to Baghdad and near the Kufa, there are Nab' Zubaydah. You go to Yumbu, they're still available. So that was really an incredible. Now, what is the incentive? You see, in development, as we will come to know, it relies on people. People, human resources, are the biggest asset of any nation. It's the human. I'll give you an example. Japan, they don't have any assets. They don't have oil, no petrol. They've got nothing. People. The people of Japan, they are the asset. They bring in material resource, raw material, they remanufacture, and then they export to the world. That's what it is. After the war, collapse, and then they come out like that. In Germany, it was flattened. The number of bombs that came over Germany are just endless. It's finished Germany in the Second World War. And look where Germany is now. Now, that is people. People who actually are the biggest resource. And I can give you the story of the Japanese motor, and how, I don't know whether many of you know about how the Japanese industry started. Right, now, very quick story. A young man, like many of the Omanis, they are sent outside to learn. They get the scholarship, they go to the West, try to get some knowledge, and then go back. Right? So he went there for a PhD in Germany. He went around, looked at the motor. Motor is the secret of movement and industry. It just turns around, makes machines, generate electricity and all that. So he wanted to make a Japanese motor. He goes to his ambassador and he says, "Sir, I don't want to do my degree. I want to invest my time in developing a Japanese motor." So what does the ambassador do? He said to him, "Come to me next week." Next week comes, the ambassador gets a broken motor, he put it in the basement in the Sirdab, right? And then when this guy comes in, he says to him, "Can you go and sort this motor out in the basement?" He goes there, repairs it, zzz, working. The ambassador says, okay. He gets in touch with his government in Japan, and they allow this boy to go back to Japan and make this. The scenario now moves on to the Mikado. Mikado is the emperor of Japan. In his memoirs, in his biography, he says, describing this boy, he says, as I was moving in the corridor in his palace, and I coming close to the room where this boy's 5 motors were, right? And as I came closer, and I hear the noise, the whizzing noise of the motors, I realized that the Japanese symphony has started. See, young person is spirited, believes in his people, believes in the importance of doing that. It became a patriotic issue, and then the wise leader adopts him, and then that's how it works. Similar things can happen. I can tell you stories about a lot of things happen in the recent history. One of them is about Malaysia. At the time of Mahathir, when he first became Prime Minister, I know a person who was my friend. He was from Manchester. He went there, when he finished his PhD, he said, I want to see the Prime Minister. He went, and they managed to give him an appointment. He went, he said, sir, I like to do something for Malaysia. I want to build, I think it's very easy to build chips, microchips. I know how to do it, and I like to do. So he says to him, are you married? He says, yes. He said, okay, phone your wife and tell her you're not going back home. You're going to be staying in the next door here, next to my office, and you're not going to come out, whether it takes you 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month, or whatever. You're not coming out of there unless you bring me a business plan of how you're going to do this. You have full authority. You can get any money you want. You can contact anybody. You can go to Prime Minister's office, right? So this guy, he goes there, and he lives in that room, and the birth of the Microelectronics Institute of Malaysia, MIMOS, has taken place. In few years' time, Malaysia becomes exporter of microchips. Right? Incredible story. The will of a young person, the spirit, right? He was a good Muslim, this guy. He wants to be good to his country, and then the wise leader adopts him. When there is a leadership and there is a movement in the young people to express their feeling through science and technology and creativity and development, that's how things will happen. It wouldn't happen by just the leader keep pushing people, do this, do that. It needs his people to respond, right? And he also needs to respond to the wish of these people. This is a paradigm that can only be created by the youth, and the leadership. Let me move on to something else, which is the catastrophic way the business in the world which is happening now today. Every one of you knows that the system in economics and banking and so on is collapsing very fast. So we are now, in the economic world and in the banking and the money, Horizon 1 is going down. Trying to keep it, it's not going to work. It's collapsing. Pumping so much money, and it's not working. It's a dead horse. Now, why is that? Everybody says it's because of the immoral behavior of the people who are involved in that industry. You get somebody like Madoff, you know the story of Madoff? He steals $5 billion. How could anybody imagine this? One person steals this amount of money. And what kind of system is this? And then you know about the Enron, how many banks have they just say, sorry, bankrupt. And all our money, your money and my money, everybody, it's just gone. Now they say about Cyprus, right? They say, okay, anybody who has more than £100,000, €100,000 in the bank, 40% is gone. What kind of situation is this? Can this happen in an Islamic situation? But in an Islamic situation, it wouldn't even reach that state. And that's what I'd like to mention to you, that there are some people who are beginning to recognize since the last 30 years, and I know because I know some of them, like the president of our university, he died. Before he died, he was made into a minister, and he became Lord Bowden of Chesterfield. He stood up in the House of Parliament, and he said to people that our economic system is collapsing. I've got his speech. And he says, I'll tell you one thing, we have to make use of the experience of the Muslims. Because when the Roman Empire had collapsed, and it collapsed due to high inflation, they tried all sorts of policies, they could not, they collapsed. and the Caesar had to go and grow cabbages in the Scilly Isles. When Muslims came immediately after the Roman collapse, the world has lived in economic prosperity. There was no inflation in the world. He said, I suggest we understand how they have done it, and please, if we don't adopt it, don't let the Muslims change that. They go and follow our ways. Because what they have is something really good. That's what he said. And it's too much detail. I can give you details afterward. I can give you in some of these speeches. Now I want to look at that. And how can one say, how did this world in the past manage to live in an economic stability situation? What kind of development? What kind of institutions? And you find that it is actually the individual behavior, the individual person, the human resource, the quality, the unit quality of a human society is what counts. And I tell you one thing, it is linked also a little bit with Oman. You'd be happy to say. Oman? What has Oman to offer to the world? Stability of the economy of the world? How could the Omanis do that? Well, I'll tell you one thing. The behavior of the Omanis, your great-great-grandfathers before, they had a special characteristic in their trades, the way they used to conduct their business. When I went to Malaysia and went to Indonesia, and I find these people, they have certain characteristics, nice people and so on. They try to find out, how did Islam come to this country? You know, Indonesia is the largest Muslim population. They tell you it's come from places like Oman. They mention the Omani traders, Omani merchants and business people who go out there and, and when you look into this, what was the characteristics of a businessman or a businesswoman in those days? And when you go deeper into that, we've discovered that the word tajir has been invented by the Prophet ﷺ. Now, I may be corrected here, because I'm not an authority on Islam and fiqh, because our organization, our foundation is non-religious, non-political. So we don't go into depths, but we look at it from the development of science and looking at how science and technology has evolved and developed. And then we come and we discover these issues. The word tajir is made out of 4 letters. Before, they used to be called simsar. The Prophet ﷺ says, Antum al-tujjar. Tajir, also mentioned in the Quran, tijaratun. Now, if those of you who have got in-depth knowledge of where these things come from, perhaps you come up with something. But let's carry on with the story. We're told that tajir is 4 letters. Ta, alif, jim, ra. The first letter ta comes from taqwa, God consciousness. Be aware that Allah watches over you. Right? The other one is amana, alif from amana, trustworthiness. And the other one is jim for jar'a, jasara, courage. You cannot make business without courage. You have to decide and make a deal, right? You may lose, you may win. So business people, successful ones, they are the ones who can take risks. And the last one is rahmah, mercy. You don't cheat the other person. You don't hoard your goods waiting for it to go up, because you think of the other. You are merciful. These characteristics, the Omanis used to have this. They invaded these parts of the world without any arms. They don't need arms. This is the most important weapon, right? Islam goes through husnul muamala. The characteristic of business was the excellence in dealing, in muamala, in dealing. When you observe these, and you observe, I give you an example of a recent thing happened in Paris. One of the businessmen, a Moroccan businessman, he was, he's a greengrocer. You know, he sells green and, you know, apples and so on, and tomatoes and meat. And he has an accountant firm to look after his accounts, so that they sort out the accounts, submit to the government, and say how much tax he has to pay. The people who came to him to sort out the accounts, they discovered that he is declaring everything. And his business is cash. You know, he gets cash. He doesn't even give any receipt. He doesn't register. But this cash, he declares everything. Every franc. So the lady in charge of this business, the accounting business, wanted to know, why is he doing this? She wanted to go and see him. She went to see him and says to him, excuse me, sir, you know, I tell you, whispering in his ears, we accountants can help you to reduce your tax. But we want to tell you one thing, ask you, why do you have to declare all the cash? You can hide half of the cash away, nobody will know, and then you only declare one half. He says, what do you mean nobody will know? She said, government will not know. He said, but there is somebody who will know. She said, what do you mean? He says, Allah will know. Allah knows. She says she was shocked. She could not believe. And she says that, you know, if all business people behave in this way, there will be no need for tax people, muraqabah and things. There will be no need for policemen. It'll be like paradise on earth. If you have everybody has his own heart and his own conscience to be. This reminds me of that. There are people who are actually like this. Now, of course, he's living in Paris. He's not in Morocco, he's in Paris. Some people want to say, okay, it's allowed to cheat the kafir. No. He says, I have been entrusted. I'm allowed here because people trust me and they expect me to pay my tax. So he pays his tax. If Muslims behave like he does in France, France will have become Muslim a long time ago. So let me, after all this, I'm going, seeing you inshallah next time when Allah wills. But let me just point out to you some of the projects that we are involved with. I think that those of you who know about the exhibition, the 1001 Inventions, those of you who have seen it in the internet or directly, you will want it to come to Muscat. So I hope, inshallah, it will come to Muscat. There are ways of how to bring it over to Oman. Then we're doing a lot of research and editing and publishing in trying to find out, you know, what has happened in Muslim heritage to sort of bring it out to the present day, so Muslim heritage in the present world. And then we are involved in what we call enriching a curriculum. How do you improve the curriculum? How do you إثراء المناهج الدراسية? How do you improve the curriculum of subjects of teaching so that the young people, when they are taught, men, women, girls and boys, they get inspired. They feel they have a purpose in life. And they rely on huge amount of history that will propel them to the future. These things can be taught. They can be, you don't have to change the syllabus, but you can get some of these packages, you can add it and give it to the teachers, and they will inspire young people. It shows them how. Then the other, you know, the school pack. Then there is also a university pack, which the university could use for the university lecturers when they teach mathematics, when they teach physics, medicine, biology, and so on. They bring some of the nice bits from the Muslim heritage past to add into these so that it also connects the best of the past for building a better future. Similarly, you can have courses, elective courses. It could be a module in university about, you know, science and Muslim heritage, and some universities doing that. And then we have leadership training courses. The beginning of my lecture, when I showed you how these slides and how they work, these are given by some top people in management. And the last one is just started the project, which is called Businessman Women. But in other words, it's being called not ألف اختراع واختراع, but ألف تاجر وتاجر. And trying to have a community of the business people around the world. They have the characters of all the Omani tujjar, of the taqwa and the amana and the jar'a and the rahma. Such tujjar need to help each other, create similar people around the world. They do business with each other, men and women, right? And at the same time, when they do that, then they can cover the costs. They direct their zakah or part of their zakah to this very nice work that I think you agree with me. It's a noble mission which needs support. Thank you for listening, and thank you for inviting me. May Allah bless you, and inshallah we'll see you again when we come to Oman.
Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Thank you very much, Professor, for this very enlightening reminder and some new understanding of what our history has been and what we could do, inshallah, for a better future, inshallah. We can have 10 to 15 minutes, inshallah, question and answers. Meanwhile, I'm reminding you to fill the questionnaires, inshallah, and then somebody will collect that. So please, there are wireless mics. You can use that, or those to air your questions, inshallah. Any question?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your efforts. We are very much obliged. My question is how to relate.
Shailal, can you stand up just?
I can hear.
Okay.
How to relate our daily deeds and da'wah as Muslims, whether we are in Oman or abroad.
How do you relate, deeds and da'wah?
Yeah, I mean,
as a Muslim organization, as a jami' or right?
No, as individuals.
Oh, I see. Because I think the Islamic organizations and mosques, I'm very impressed with your mosque, mashallah. This is just unbelievable, really. Such a wonderful building, and also the people involved in it, wonderful people. But this is very special and very unique, but they're not like what's happening around the world. Unfortunately, they could do with a lot of improvement, a lot of development. And what comes to my mind, by the way, in one of the times of the Ottoman in Istanbul, there was an advertisement for an imam. Right? You're in a jami' atmosphere, and it just tells you how Muslim heritage in the past looked like. This advert gives a list of job description, the characteristic of the person they are after. Unbelievable. I don't have the list. I could get the list in here, but it will take me a few minutes to get that out for that. First, he has to be conversant with Quran and Hadith and so on, and knows Arabic. Obvious, isn't it? Right? Next one, he has to be conversant in another foreign language, preferably English and French. The other one is, he has to be familiar with subjects like physics and mathematics. Right? The next one is, has to be able to practice active sports. Right? Like horse riding and swimming and so on, right? The other one is, he has to be nice looking, right? The other one is that his voice is melodious, right? Believe me, this list is just incredible. It shows you there is civilization. If you I read this list in the UK. There was a British minister. And had all the imams, and because they're worried about the Muslims, what's happening, and because they're causing a lot of problems. And so I said, there were all imams in there. When I read this list, and somebody stood up and he says, we will all fail that job. We will not be able to get that job. And that was 1,000 years ago. So in terms of da'wah, as you have seen, of course people have to be good and tell others. But I don't think the Omani merchants, they were giving sermons to the Chinese or the Indonesians or the Malaysians. I don't think they were giving them da'wah in the way we are doing. And these people, they have observed, like that baqqal, like that greengrocer in Paris. That's what they did. They observe their deen and concentrated on modern ways of how to you know, they were obviously very active business people. They were good market people. They used their own, the modern techniques, but the moral code which they have, and they discipline themselves. It's not like many of us say, okay, do what I say, but don't do what I do. This is not right. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You know, and you know, and I know, there is a very dangerous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which is hadith al-Muflis, the bankrupt. When the Prophet ﷺ asked his companions, he says, do you know who is the Muflis? Man al-Muflis? They said, the Muflis, the bankrupt, is the one who doesn't have in Oman you call riyals. He doesn't have the riyals to pay to his debts. He said, no, the Muflis is the one who goes to the day of judgment after he has lived all his life praying, fasting, reading Quran, doing all this. And then he goes up on the day of judgment. And then all these people come up. And yawm al-hisab. And Allah, this fellow says he has taken my money, that fellow says he has, done this, he's backbited me, this one is, he hit me. And all these people come and they want their right. They didn't get their right in the lifetime. So they get their right in the day of judgment. And what Allah does, He takes from His hasanat, from His good deeds, give them to these people. Because he cannot pay money. There is no check, there's no bank at that time. Right? It's only your deeds. So you lose your good deeds. And then these people but then he run out. Then He takes the bad deeds of these people and start giving him their bad deeds. And then he ends up in hell. A poor man. He spends all his life praying, probably making da'wah also as well, right? And then he ends up in hell. It's very frightening, actually. So I think the deen al-mu'amala is the secret of how da'wah happens in Islam. But I think you have here some fantastic mosque, and you have a lot of people, and I heard that many non-Muslims come and become Muslim in here because it's a nice place. The people, I understand, give some good, clear, high quality material, the way they talk about things. So it is, inshallah, a good thing. But I think development, we need to develop in our techniques, develop our lives as Muslim people, and develop our society in science, technology, and give this understanding that Islam and Muslim heritage is not isolated. It's not only about mosques. It's about everything we do in life that wants us to take us from where we are to a better future. There's a young lady there, very enthusiastic, raising her hand. Okay.
Hi, Salam Alaikum. I want to thank you very much. We appreciate you coming here and giving us this beautiful lecture. And I had a lot to learn from you. My question to you is that you talked about development and about like Japan and Germany, and about the economy, and about Islam not being just concerned with mosques, but with development. So I want to ask you, money and like in the quest for happiness, earning more money, and Islam and living a virtuous life, sometimes it can get a little, I want to know how can making money and living a life for money integrate the spirituality aspect that Islam has to teach. Because I know a lot of people who are like, if you're very spiritual, you're not going to be ambitious. If you're very ambitious, you cannot be spiritual. Could you please highlight what is your perspective?
Thanks. You're right, but the word, because of the time element, we have to go. I'll lead you to the word which was called al-mizan, balance. Islam expects you to have balance. You have your share in this life, but don't forget about the final end, right? they said, work as اعمل لدنياك كأنك تعيش أبدا واعمل لآخرتك كأنك تموت غدا. Do your lifestyle and your work, right, and your earnings as if you're going to live forever. So don't, right. But then for your other life, you work as if you're dying tomorrow. And this balance is difficult sometimes because human beings they are human beings, and they, Allah creates them. This is their nature. They love money. They love, sex. They love all these tests come in together. But this is where the faith and the religion will give you that balance. And there has to be a conflict, otherwise there is no test. Yeah, the balance is the way out. But balance only comes in is when you have conflict between two extremes. So you cannot just live all your life like what happens in the West, no God, no future, right? It's today, and make as much money as possible, to hell with other people. You bring in the children from the very first day as competitors. You have to be the best. It's fine to be the best, but your competition with others, don't hurt them. What happens is that people are brought up as wolves. They eat you, right? No mercy. It's a bunch of, very active, material, consuming, army in the world, which is going that way. And they come and eat you. And so, when you behave like this without having a balance, something for yourself, because Islam looks at you complete. There is your physical being, it's your body, you need your food, you need your clothing, you need your beauty. All this is your physical, right? And then you have your inside, your soul, your spirit. Some people look so beautiful, so, but inside, their soul is so hungry, so black, they look like a dead skeleton. And the other one is the mind. There are three. There is the physical body, there is the spiritual inside, and there is the mental intellect. And if you look at the way wherever there was a successful Muslim society, they had a balance between these three. There's something for the mind, something for the soul, something for the body. If you concentrate only on one of them, there is no balance. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
To be precise, so I don't take much of your time. First of all, thank you. So we move on from that. Next thing, you live in the UK, and there's a lot of negative stereotyping with Muslims, about Islam. Especially at this day and age, we have all sorts of sects and what have you. My question is, when we started about bridging the gap from where we were, the past and the present, and going towards the future, how can we do that? And how are you doing it to get that message across about all the positive things that Islam brought to humanity?
Well, sorry, in UK?
Well, as an example, because you live in UK and
yes,
you're a Muslim living in UK and you actually have all this knowledge. How can we learn from that? We live in our own cocoon here, with being in a Muslim country, with a Muslim society and what have you. When we look at the news, everywhere we go,
we call Muslim places like yours as Muslim majority countries. We don't call them Islamic country. It is Islamic, of course, but the best name is Muslim majority country. We in the UK, we call ourselves Muslim minority country. So there is a fiqh of how to live as a minority. Muslims are experienced in doing that, not only in the West, but even in the past, when they went to Habasha and so on. So Muslims have their own problems. There's a big problem going on in the UK, in America, and so on. And there are problems in the Muslim house to sort themselves out, because they have huge competition and problems and greed and money and all that, and authority, and the dynamics inside. But also there are problems outside the Muslim house. Life is full of problems. But in terms of producing exemplary good Muslim behavior, it's a very difficult thing to produce in the UK, because the UK, they lack the connection with people like you. I remember when Omanis, I am impressed by, I've had a lot of Omani students before, and they were very good. When I had my own children, the first boy, I have 3 boys and 1 girl. The first boy, he was lucky, because we had the group, we used to go out to camps, take them to camps, a number of them. He was lucky to be in contact with 2 Omani PhD students. They had such an influence on him. Until now, after 25 years, they keep asking me, if you go there, Baba, please find out where so I'm not going to mention their names, and give them salam. They had an impact. They're nice behavior. So if the Muslims from the outside world can connect with the future generation of the Muslims in the UK and the United States, I think the moral and good conduct behavior could be maintained. Equally, Muslims in the UK and in America and in Europe, they can be very useful for the Muslim world because they have the technology, they have learned some of the very interesting things, they become a good asset. So the idea is if you strengthen the relationship, I think it would be a win-win situation. Even the British government and the American one, they will also win, because when these Muslim communities are active in the Muslim world and trade and in transfer of technology and so on, they will prosper as well because they will open doors for business, right? Business in both ways. Yeah, is that okay?
Yes, but I wanted to relate with what you said earlier in terms of the past.
Sorry?
Our Muslim past,
yes.
Our history,
yes.
To propagate it in order to give us a positive image. What you've just said
yes.
Most of what I wanted to hear.
Yes.
The past.
Muslims in the UK, when they know about their connection with their own past, it empowers them. I'll give you a very simple example. One boy from the city of Leeds, 17 years of age, from Bangladesh, he had big psychological problems. He was about to commit suicide in 2006. His friends, they knew about the exhibition 1001 inventions in Manchester. That's when we first started. And they were inspired by it and see how, so in fact we have a stake in this civilization. We share the building of mathematics, algebra, bringing all sorts of technologies that came from the Muslim world to this country. So we are not foreign to it. And so what they thought, they should bring this boy into Manchester, and he came. I am sorry, but I was not there when he came. What he did, he saw the exhibition, and then he looked at the book, 1001 Inventions book. What he did is he took a chair in front of all the public, he stood on the chair, right? And he held the book and he says, I feel I am a human being now. Right? Look at this. Yeah. And this guy now is inspired. He wants to do science and technology. He wants to get the Nobel Prize. So this is his jihad. The problem with such people with their attitude will become vulnerable to an extremist group, and they will come and tell him, why do you want to throw yourself out of the window and then you will end up in hell? If you take with you some 40 infidels, right, you will end up with Hur al-Ain in paradise. It's a very dangerous paradigm. This is the sort of thing you are up against. So if you let people express their faith and their religiousness and religiosity by conducting, by seeing some role examples from the past to build a better future for humanity, then you are making people alive. Now, I have been given this note. They remind me that I have a plane to catch very early in the morning. So what I suggest you do is you can, those of you who have not seen the websites, what I suggest you can go and visit these websites. The first one, which is our foundation one, is fstc.org.uk, right? And you can write to info at any of them. It will come to the office and then they will transfer. If you mention my name, you want to contact me. In fact, mine is just, instead of www, it'll be Salim at fstc.org.uk. Then there is this, for the very exciting, popular, you can download a lot of stuff in 1000inventions.com. The academic portal, which has got thousands of articles about various subjects, peer-reviewed, very important subjects. They are in muslimheritage.com. And for enriching the curriculum in schools, for your kids and so on, you can go to CE4 Sorry, it should be CE for TF, but if you go to CE for CE, I have to change that because we changed the name because it's now for the future. Okay? So it's the last line is CE for TF, Curriculum Enrichment for the Future. .org. Sorry, this was the previous company. Okay, so it's .org. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed being in Muscat.
Thank you very much, Professor. Jazakumullah khair. We're coming to an end. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Few announcements, very quickly. We're reminding you to fill the questionnaires again, please. Please, we do have Islamic Information Center in Oman. The office is in this premises. We have an office here for ladies and gents, sisters and brothers. And also, the working hours is 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the evening, every day, 7 days a week. And there are also opening hours in the morning, every day, Saturday to Wednesday, from 9 to 11. Including Thursday, yes. From Saturday to Thursday, 9 to 11, and every day, 5 to 8 p.m. Anyone want to know about more about Islam? You have somebody who wants to know more for free literature also, please, you can come to us, and inshallah, we ask Allah to guide all of us. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقاة له بساق. شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقاة له بساق. أحب الله عن أدب وصدق ولا أرضى سوى التقوى خلاق. شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقاة له بساق. شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقاة له بساق. أحب الله عن أدب وصدق ولا أرضى سوى التقوى خلاقي. إذا ما عشت لا أنسى إلهي به أسمو من الأخرى المراقي. يعز علي ترك الحب عندي ولو بلغت بي الروح التراقي. تركت جميع خلق الله دوني شغلت عن الخلائق باشتياقي. شراب الحب يعرف بالمذاق وما كل السقاة له بساق. شراب الحب يعرف